It brought one of our favorite 2D worlds into the realm of 3D. With it, we were dropped into the middle of a vast world, full to the brim with a colorful cast of characters that hid secrets in every nook and cranny. The core mechanics of its gameplay are still commonplace 22 years later, and its soundtrack, well, it's hard to find somebody that doesn't recognize its haunting melodies after all these years. There are few games that can call themselves the best game of all time, but they always seem to get dethroned at some point. Not this one. On the user aggregate site Metacritic, after 22 years, it still ranks as the number one rated game of all time. On other lists of the best games of all time, it's pretty close. Number 3, number 39, number 29, number 25. Everywhere you look, this game is in the conversation. 1998's Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time is certainly looked at as one of the best games of all time. But what makes it so, and does everybody love it? We're going to be discussing this and more as we take today's trip down memory card lane. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I hope that these words find you well. We are here, gathered, and ready for the 13th episode of our video game nostalgia podcast, A Trip Down Memory Card Lane. If you're new to our listening audience, each week we take a look back at an important release during this week in gaming history, and we either talk about the game or we just make up topics around it. That's it. We're basic bitches here. Nothing special. As always, I'm joined by my own annoying little fairy that always tells me to look for no reason. My brother Rob Casson. Rob, what's going on, man?
Did you just call me a fairy motherfucker? Hold the fuck up. I might be annoying, but I am not. God, I mean, no offense to those that are, but no. I mean, you at least
Hey,
could have just specified a little Navi
hey, well, do you know what Navi is short for?
navigation.
Well, yeah, because originally it was going to be the ferry navigation system, so they shortened it to Navi. Hey, look! I haven't played this in a long time. Is that pretty accurate? You have, right?
I have been working on a playthrough recently, yes, and
Yeah.
yeah, you're pretty close, yeah.
Hey, look! What else did you say?
Listen,
Listen, that's it. If there's one thing I do remember from playing this, it's Navi. Navi,
well,
Navi,
Dave,
Navi.
for those of the listeners who don't know who Navi is, or maybe we're pronouncing it very wrong and people are really confused, why don't we introduce the game?
Yeah. All right. Well, November 23rd, 1998. Long time ago. How long is that? 22 years? 20, I don't know. Is it really 22 years?
Yeah, that is 22 years yesterday
Yeah, yeah, that it
at the
is.
time of recording.
22 years. Fantasy, action, adventure, third person game. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Well, this one's a doozy, eh?
That it is, Dave. This is
It's
a game that's both loved and hated by many.
I know, man. I feel like we're not gonna win with this one. We're either gonna make a lot of people happy or piss a lot of people off, or probably both at the same time. It's gonna be so. So let's introduce the game. Let's talk about some of its main gameplay elements. So open world. We've discussed open worlds before. We talked about that topic with Just Cause. Do you consider this an open world game, Rob?
I've in the term of the sense, it is open world. You can choose where to go, and although I've always kind of followed a specific, the game kind of forces you into a very linear playing. So you do have some small offshoot things you can go and do, and if you wanted to go and do like the collectibles and stuff, yeah, it's sort of open world, but I still feel that it's just a large map that you have to go to different places to get to.
Yeah,
Not so
but
much that
it's
that side quest aspect that when we talk about open world, we're thinking the large choose your own adventure style.
but but this has got the central hub, which just kind of leads to everything, and I guess that's the open world. You know, we'll talk about it a little bit, but I guess it gets a little muddy with the temples and the time and everything. But you do have that nice big central. Okay, this game came out I think a year or two after Super Mario 64, and I think that it's open world in a lot of the way Mario 64 is open world, in that you have a central hub, but you jump through paintings to get to the other zones. I kind of think of this as the same way, how you have the central hub, which is the Hyrule castle field, everything, and then you have all the little things around it. Does that make sense? Is my memory serving me correctly?
You're
Not really.
saying no, I'm just so this game more of sorry, hold on one second. I just want to look at the map. So this isn't centralized around Hyrule Castle. It's the entirety of the map is centered around Hyrule Field, which within Hyrule Field you do have enemies, and you have the Lon Lon Ranch, which is important in the second when you're an adult as you're trying to get Epona. But from Hyrule Field, there's really not much you can do in there. It's just that is your central hub that you're speaking of, where you can get to Lake Hylia or Gerudo Valley or the
Lake
Lost Woods in
Hylia.
Kokiria
Yeah, yeah,
Forest in
yeah,
Kakariko, and then Castletown, which contains Hyrule Castle.
yeah, yeah. That's right. You know, the Gerudos and the Death Mountain trail up to Death Mountain. Yeah, 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 I can see that. You know, I get open world. I guess fair. It's an open world game, just a small.
Yeah, we'll call it open world.
It's not the first open world, but it's probably we could probably argue that it's one of the most influential of the 3D generation. I think that this one and Grand Theft Auto 3 3 was the first 3D Grand Theft Auto, wasn't it? Yeah.
If that's Vice City, yes, it is.
No, was Vice City the first 3D one?
Oh, 3D. Sorry, I was back
Yeah.
on the open world. Sorry, yes, Grand
Well,
Theft Auto 2.
I'm trying to think back to open world, games that were influential in open world and then 3D. We kind of talked about we talked about open world in the past, but I think that arguably this one and that and Grand Theft Auto 3 were two of the most influential for bringing open world games into the 3D generation. So,
Yes, GTA 3 is correct.
there were a lot of other things that this game did very, very well. One of the things that everyone was worried about when an action adventure game came to 3D was the camera and how the camera would interact when you're doing things. So this game had Z targeting, which I you played through it on the 3DS remake, correct?
As I have also played it on the original on
But
Nintendo 64.
you're currently playing it
Currently,
on.
yes.
So that's the L targeting system for you, is it not? Doesn't that isn't didn't they move it to the L button for the remake?
That might be why I'm having issues pressing it all the time because my L button is messed up on this one.
I'm pretty sure they moved the targeting to the L button on the remake. But basically, the targeting was when you press the button for targeting Z or L, Link, the main character, focuses on one specific enemy and the camera fixes on it. So it was a way that they tried to work around the awkwardness of 3D by making it not so 3D when you fought. Is that right? That's a good way to assume it, isn't it?
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. So you have, it does still have some. You don't really have very much Z axis movement in your fights. There are some enemies that are above you. The Skulltulas that drop down from above, or Varia, whatever the dragon is that you fight in Death Mountain, or obviously you're fighting the paintings. So you do have some that are in the Z axis, but a lot of it you do feel is more on the linear planes. You're only focusing on two direction.
One of the other things that Ocarina of Time did it's one of the first games that did it. To be honest, is context sensitive buttons. So instead of assigning a ton of different gameplay, a ton of different things that need to be achieved during gameplay to different buttons, you had context sensitive buttons. So, example, the A button. When you're standing next to a box, just standing next to it, the A button climbs up the box. When you're pushing towards the box, yeah, when you're moving towards the box, the A button pushes the box. It was basically a way to map a bunch of different things to the same button, so you didn't have to overly complicate it by having two separate buttons for climbing and pushing when they would never happen at the same time. It's ingenious, really, and it's commonplace nowadays. But at the time, that was a pure innovation. It was just period pure innovation. I don't know what else to say. Context sensitive buttons are a thing, you know.
Absolutely. And, Mario did have it at the same time, but we're talking two most revolutionary games in all of gaming. Well, I shouldn't say all of gaming, but two very influential games throughout the history of gaming. And, even if Zelda was slightly behind Mario, it still did a phenomenal job of pushing that narrative.
With the big map, we got horse riding. You mentioned Epona already. That was the first appearance of Link's horse, Epona. So that was something different.
That it was.
And then, of course, you have its namesake, the Ocarina of Time. Both time and music play a vital role in this game, do they not?
Absolutely, they do.
We'll talk a little bit of well, we'll talk more about it as we go on. Let's go into the plot. Let's jump right into the plot. Rob, without getting into the Ocarina of Time, we'll get right into the Ocarina of Time. The plot for most of the Zelda games is all the same, correct?
Very similar. I haven't played all of them, but all the ones that I have played, pretty much the same story plot. So I'm guessing they all are the same.
Uh, I mean, there's some variation. I mean, there's some variation here and there that we can discuss, but why don't you tell our listeners, boil the plot down to its most basic essence? What is the basic idea of every single Legend of Zelda game?
So the normal storyline of Zelda, for those that don't know, is that it centers around a princess named Zelda, a young or older
Yep.
man named Link, and a villain by the name of Ganon. Link is always the same person reincarnated. Zelda is the reincarnation of the goddess Hylia, and Ganon is an evil warlord who has turned demon. So the basis of the game is that Ganon is trying to take over the world and either imprisons or is kidnapping or is fighting with Zelda, and Link has to come and save the day.
I
And
would tell
that's
you
it.
that's it. That's all of them. I will tell you, I forgot some things when I was doing my research for this. I forgot that Ganon was a Gerudo. The last Zelda, I think most of us have played. Some of us may have done Link's Awakening, but prior to that, we had Breath of the Wild, right? I mean, you played Breath of the Wild,
Yep,
and in Breath of the Wild, the only time that you interact with the Gerudo are, Gerudo Town, which is a town full of women, correct?
correct.
And I completely forgot that Ganon was a Gerudo, and it's just been so long since they've come together. I forgot that Gerudo are a desert clan of women, but once every 100 years, there's one man born to the clan, and right in most of our storyline, that's Ganon. He is Ganon in his demon form, but Ganondorf in his Gerudo form, depending on the game you're playing, which is kind of interesting. Rob, you said that you have not played all the Zeldas, correct?
Correct.
Do you know much about the entire timeline of Zelda, where games fall here or there, or how it all comes together?
I do know that there are multiple timelines within the different games, although I don't know well enough which games belong to which timeline and in which place.
This is one of my favorite things about The Legend of Zelda, and I will totally admit I have played almost all of them. I think there's, excuse me, one that I haven't. Ocarina of Time sits at a very interesting point in the chronology of the entirety of the Zelda series. So you are correct, there are different timelines. Ocarina of Time is before all of the Zelda games that we know of that made this series famous, like the original Legend of Zelda and Legend of Zelda 2 and Link's Awakening that we just talked about and Breath of the Wild. Ocarina of Time sits before all of it, right? And all of that, basically Ocarina of Time is where the timeline splits. Okay?
Hmm.
There are two different branches after Ocarina of Time. There's one in which the hero is defeated at the end of Ocarina of Time. So at the end of this game, Ganon prevails. And in the timeline where Ganon prevails, you have the original Legend of Zelda, its sequel Link to the Past, Link's Awakening and Link Between Worlds, right? On the other hand, you have a whole series of games that take place if Link is successful and defeats Ganon at the end of Ocarina of Time. So, for instance, he is reincarnated as a child after being victorious in Majora's Mask, which was the sequel kind of to Ocarina of Time, the one made after it, and then the Twilight Princess, which was the gay or Wii. Twilight Princess was the first Wii Zelda, was it not?
Uh, Either that or Wind Waker. I forget.
Oh, I forgot about Wind Waker. Yeah.
Wind Waker might have
Uh,
been released on the GameCube originally, though.
I think. And then after if Ocarina of Time, where Link is victorious, he is reincarnated as an adult for Wind Waker and Phantom Hourglass. And then the latest one, Breath of the Wild, takes place chronologically after all of this. It's the most recent reincarnation of Link, who gets to fight Ganon over and over and over. And then you have some games that come before it, like, oh man, why can't I remember any of the names? The hat one. And then the one where you find out Ganon is actually Demise, the demon. I can't That's the first one in the series and I can't remember.
The Legend of Zelda and the Legend of
No,
Zelda 2.
no. They're the little GameCube ones. I can't remember them for the life of me. The ones that come before it. There's three games that come before Ocarina of Time officially.
Adventure of Link,
No,
Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons, Four Swords,
Four Swords is one of them, I believe.
the Minish Cap.
The Minish Cap. See, I said hat. The Minish Cap is the earliest one, isn't it?
That I don't know. I'm just looking at the chronological release or the release schedules.
Oh, it has nothing to do with release schedules. I'm talking
No,
about
chronologically, I know.
Skyward Sword. Isn't Skyward Sword one of the early ones too? Skyward Sword, the Minish Cap, and the Four Swords come before Ocarina of Time. That's it. Skyward Sword's the first one. So,
Gotcha.
and then yeah. Anyway, that's where the Demon King Demise. Skyward Sword is where Demise comes from, and then Demise gets reincarnated as Ganon. It's really fascinating that they found a way to bring this all together. Honestly, it's really fascinating, actually.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know. It's really you have all these games where essentially Link is living the same story over and over and over, just in various places at various times type deal, and it's kind of cool. And I mean, honestly, the story of Ocarina of Time plays into the fact that there could still be two different timelines, without giving the end away. It's kind of done in a way where it can be ambiguous. Like you can see through the ending how it can fall either way. So, but that's way ahead of where we are. So let's talk about the plot of Ocarina of Time itself. So we started out the episode making fun of Navi, and that is where Ocarina of Time begins, does it not, Rob?
That it does. You
How
begin
far?
being woken up from a nightmare.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a nightmare, so time to wake up, Dave. How far into your current playthrough are you?
I have just reached the dreaded water temple.
Oh man, so you're kind of smack dab in the middle of the second act, I guess.
That I am, yes.
So let's talk. So you've gotten through the first act before the time element, I guess. Tell me a little bit about the plot up until that point.
So, as Dave said, the story begins with Link being woken by Navi and having to visit the Great Deku Tree. There, the Stone of the Forest is given to Link, and he's told to go to Hyrule Castle to speak with the princess. And as we mentioned before, this is Princess Zelda. So Zelda tells Link that Ganondorf is searching for the Triforce, which, for those who aren't familiar with the system, is the culmination of the three triangles stacked in such a way that there are four triangles or one large triangle. It's the reason they call it Triforce is the triangle comprised of the three, and it's supposed to give him godlike powers.
What are the three
So,
pieces? Do you remember?
power, wisdom, and courage. Maybe
Yeah, you got it. Good job.
look at me go.
I know. I'm really proud. I don't know if I could have done that off the top of my head, to be honest with you, because it's not. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of Zelda games that talk about specific pieces because you don't actually find all three in them. Like there's the
I think
first
you're only
game.
ever given one. at a
Yeah,
time.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got it. You got it. Oh, and because if I'm not mistaken, isn't the Triforce of Power the one Ganon ends up with a lot?
I
Yeah,
that I'm not sure of, honestly.
yeah.
But
So,
anyway, so obviously the intent of the game as Link is to prevent Ganondorf from getting the Triforce. So Zelda sends you on a quest to seek out the additional spiritual stones. Doing this, you are to meet with the sages of each of these temples, and the sages are the ones who would present to you these stones to open what is called the Sacred Realm, which contains the Master Sword, which is the sword that can defeat Ganon. So while you are trying to get to the Sacred Realm, Zelda is taken away by Ganon, and Triforce is stolen.
yeah,
So Link is then sealed within the temple that they were all at this entrance to the Sacred Realm, until he was old enough to wield the Master Sword to be able to defeat Ganon, as he was the reincarnated hero who was the only one who could wield the Master Sword and do so. And this takes place, he's sealed away for 7 years, and within those 7 years, Ganondorf has taken over Hyrule.
that sounds about it. Always a time when Ganon takes over. I went back for a second. Side note: it was the power. In the original Legend of Zelda, the two pieces that are introduced in the game are the Triforce of Power and the Triforce of Wisdom. So,
Gotcha.
Link is sealed away for 7 years until he's old enough to wield the Master Sword and defeat Ganon, right?
Right.
And that leads us to the second act of Ocarina of Time and the Hero of Time. A tale as old of time as old of time, a tale as old as time. I named the episode that. I like it. And then I'm gonna, start singing Disney tunes, I guess. I want to talk a little bit about the second act because arguably the temples are a Legend of Zelda staple. They were dungeons in the first game, and then they became temples, right?
Right.
So if you're at the water temple, you've been through forest, fire, and ice, correct?
Correct. Yes.
So the forest temple, remind
Well,
me,
actually, I don't believe I've done ice yet. I believe on mine I did forest, fire,
and then
and
went to
then
water.
no, I think I'm in the ice now. No. Anyway, let's just say that I'm on the water temple because that's the most one I remember right now.
The forest temple is kind of the first time in the game that you get introduced to a dungeon. Is that right?
Um,
Are there dungeons in the first act? I think you just go
in the
around collecting
first
mats and stuff.
in the first act, you do enter into the mouth of, or the not the mouth, the intestines of Lord Jabu Jabu in Zora's
Oh,
domain,
that's right. Gabba,
and
isn't
that
it?
Jabu
Gabbin, gabbin, jobbin, jobbin, gabbin, gabbin, something like that.
Gabu Gabu Jabu Gabu Gabu.
Yeah,
I
I know.
forget, but
Yeah,
so
I know.
anyway, that's kind of the first look into a dungeon with the different entrances and different enemies, sort of puzzles you have to unlock as you're escorting the princess of Zora, Princess Rudo. So you do have the escort missions with Princess Rudo, where quite literally you're carrying her through the inside of this lord, and trying to get her out as she's trying to find the I guess engagement ring of the Zora, which she then gives to Link. So, it's actually kind of cool for those that have played Breath of the Wild. There is a mention of the Hylian who was to marry Princess Rudo. And in this
Well, I mean,
game,
in Breath of the Wild, you have a direct inspiration in Divine Beast Varuda, whose name was directly inspired from Ruda.
well,
So
right, but Rudo is mentioned in there that there was a young Hylian that the she had made a set of the tunics for, that they fit that person specifically that was to be her husband.
yes,
And
yeah.
in this game, it's said that whoever is receiving the Zora jewels from the princess is it's basically the engagement ring. So that is the person to whom she is to marry.
Yeah, that is true. Zora's engagement ring, one of the three spiritual stones.
Correct.
So tell me about the forest temple. I big the boss at the end of the forest temple. What is it? trying to remember.
The Forest Temple boss is the evil spirit Phantom Ganon. So that is your first battle with Ganon. It is basically an homage to a Super Mario 64 because Ganon is riding atop a horse and coming in and out of paintings.
Really?
Yes,
Huh. It has been a long time since I've played this game. I'm gonna be totally honest with you. Yeah, I don't remember that. That's cool. In and out of paintings, you said, huh?
that is correct. Yes.
All right, all right, all right. Well, what came after that one? You know what I remember about the Forest Temple? I remember having to climb up all those vines in that part of that temple, having to climb up the vines all the time.
Hmm.
And no, that's mostly it. Going up there. I don't know, man. What else is in there? Anything else? Anything else that sticks out? Phantom Ganon. And you hit him with the bow as he comes in and out of paintings. That's right.
Yep.
Man, that's cool. And it is. It's a total throw. It's like they borrowed it from Mario 64. You're absolutely right about that. It's things you don't think about. It's been years since I played it, and that. You're right. It's a direct correlation. All right, so you did the fire one next.
Yep. So after that is the Fire Temple.
What sticks out for you with the fire one?
Having to jump over lava, it seems a lot more dangerous than just a drop because you have to worry about taking fire and then having to utilize fire throughout the temple, such as shooting through a fire to unlock a door. And then obviously the boss, which is a dragon,
Yeah, the
uh,
fire dragon, the worm vole.
Volvagia something
That's it.
like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, lava dragon.
And
Yeah,
that
that one.
is very and for me this is kind of what sparked my love of dragons. This boss was so influential to me that my was kind of my inspiration behind my love of dragons.
And then you get
It's
the
just such a cool
hammer,
battle.
right?
And you get the hammer,
With the
yes.
Gorons. I love the Gorons. Who doesn't love the Gorons? They're so
Oh,
simple.
they're
Just
great.
smash.
Roll around.
After this in your playthrough, you're doing the ice cavern, so you're in Zora's domain at this point.
I'm in Zora's domain. In the ice cavern.
Gotcha.
So,
But you
with
haven't finished it yet.
correct.
So you're just breaking up icicles. This one had the puzzles with the ice blocks that would slide around the place, and you had to slide them a specific way. Isn't that right?
That is correct.
Well, then you haven't even
How it
gotten
works.
to the water temple yet.
On this playthrough, no, but that one is such a thorn in my side that it's not hard to forget. I'll never
No.
forget the water temple.
Water Temple, for those of you that don't know, is notoriously one of the hardest dungeons of all time. Anytime there's a list of top 10 hardest game dungeons or stuff like that, Water Temple always finds its way on it. I don't remember. I don't know why, but for me, it's not. I don't remember struggling that bad with the Water Temple. I'm not gonna say it was easy, but I just don't remember struggling so bad to where it's that high on the list for me. I remember thinking it was super cool. You have the iron boots to make yourself sink, and then I don't know, man. You have the iron boots and blowing up walls, and you get the long shot in the water temple and the room of illusions, right? I remember the. Do you remember the room of illusions?
Yes.
That and then in the room of illusions you find Dark Link, which is very cool.
I believe, wasn't it called Shadowlink?
I'm
Or
gonna
is
go
that a
either.
different game?
No, I mean, I guess you could go either way. Shadow Link, Dark Link. I don't think it matters. I'm sure it does matter to some fans. I'm sorry, fans, that we don't remember
I'm
exactly
pretty
it.
sure it's Shadowlink.
And
Maybe I'm
then
wrong.
and then Water Temple's boss was the giant octopus tentacle-ish thingy, right?
Water Temple's boss was Morpha, which was an amoeba, but kind of a tentacle-like thing. Yes.
I think it's more like Zelda Cthulhu, but that's just me.
I mean, it is the giant aquatic amoeba Morpha.
Yeah, so I don't know. After that, you've got the Shadow Temple, you got the Spirit Temple, and then you find your way back at Ganon's castle. It was I mean, how long is an Ocarina of Time playthrough? Do you remember?
Are we talking speed runs or are we talking casual?
What's the speed run? Have you looked that up in your research?
That is a very loaded question because you have
Oh
either a glitchless
man,
run, or like a legit run. If
good
we're talking a
lord!
legit run, I believe it's like 3 hours.
And it
Well,
looks
last
like
I checked.
the average play time is between 25 and 30 hours.
I was gonna say I would actually have thought it was down about 10 to 15, but
Yeah, it looks like completionist is 39 hours, but main storyline is 27. Average is 30 and a half hours. Average is 30 and a
gotcha.
half hours. So,
So the as
God,
of January 16th, the glitchless record, according to speedrun.com, was 3 hours, 40 minutes, and 49 seconds.
hmm, interesting. It's funny to think this is only 30 hours. 30 hours is such a small investment to a game these days. And this game felt so much bigger when we were little. Well, I mean, at least for me, when I was little, it felt like such a big game. But in the scheme of things, it's a pretty average game, I guess. I don't know. You know what though? It's unfair of me to compare it because right now I'm comparing it to Breath of the Wild, which was literally hundreds of hours for many of us. So,
Yeah,
um,
that's a pretty bold comparison.
but I think in the way that Ocarina of Time was a defining moment for 3D open world games back in '98, I think Breath of the Wild was one of the more recent ones that did the same thing. It sure as hell brought Zelda into the 21st century or whatever time we're in right now. You get through the temples, we defeat Ganon, we're back at the end of the game, and we find ourselves at the timeline split, kind of a perfect circle. And we can either go to where we lost Ganon and we go back to the original Legend of Zelda, excuse me, or we go back to where we beat Ganon and we can go to all the other games. Either way, it all leads us to where we are now. That's the kind of part that sucks about split timelines like this. Does it really matter? Because now we're in the Breath of Wild timeline. Like, who cares? Ocarina of Time win, Ocarina of Time lose, adult win, adult or child win, all of it led to the same place. That's the crappy part about split timelines, if you ask me. If split timelines all converge in a single place, what difference does it matter? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I guess if you just wanted to see the two ways that it could have played out after that game, it's a cool idea, but you do end up at the same point, but it's kind of interesting to see the different ways that you reach that point.
That's true. I will give you that. I guess I'm looking at it through cause and effect. It doesn't matter which way you got there. Breath of the if we're gonna consider the fact that right here and now is Breath of the Wild, nothing about Ocarina of Time or the games that it's the timelines that split up meant anything. We're always gonna end up in a place where Ganon, has defeated taken over the divine beasts and taken over Hyrule, and led us to Breath of the Wild. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Which I don't know. So here we are, Ocarina of Time, a tale as old as time. It is currently the top ranked game on Metacritic. On other sites, it's number 3, number 25, number 29, number 36. So it's definitely there in the conversations of best games of all time. We've been having that conversation with a lot of games lately, right? I think the last 2 or 3 episodes, it's hey, this one's on the list of best games of all time, but this one literally is ranks number one on Metacritic, which is arguably an aggregate site that collects a lot of stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
Do you think it belongs there, Rob?
It's definitely hard to say number one. I mean, that's a decision made many, many people, but I definitely feel that it is worthy. It did a phenomenal job, and even today, this game still holds up really well. I mean, yes, you have the people who dissent from this opinion, and
Yeah,
arguments are valid, but to a lot of people, and you know, this is
your opinion.
no, it's based on my experience. It's where you're basing something on the fact that it's happened, or like something that's happened to you. Anywho, in my from me and everyone that I've talked to about this game and or played this game with, everyone still loves it to this day, even whether it's the original Nintendo 64 version or the Nintendo 3DS version or even an emulator version. It's a fun game to go back and play through and to relive your childhood. And maybe you didn't play it as a child, you might not find it as fun. That's perfectly valid. But the nostalgia factor is so huge for so many because this was the first look into so many different aspects of current gaming. And we talked about all of them at the beginning of the episode. When you think of games before this, with the exception of Mario 64, a lot of them were not this advanced, this developed. And just to be able to go back and play a game that was pivotal in the evolution of gaming is just something that hits different. And I think that between this and Super Mario 64, both of them are definitely contenders.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we would be remiss if we didn't hear from what the people think. As normal, I have collected a number of reviews that both praise and criticize this game. So let's take a look at those. Rob, if you'd be so kind, I sent you one of the first reviews that praises this game. Let's hear from Doodler Man on Metacritic. What does he have to say?
Doodler Man has to say that I'm one of those people who think that this is the greatest game of all time, no matter what quality games are out now or will ever be out. This is just plain the best game I've ever played. Why? Partly because it was the first good game I've actually played. When I first got a Nintendo 64, was considerably young, and yet every game I played I thought was absolutely horrible. All I had were simple objective games, and as a child I thought they were hard and pointless. Then one day, Ocarina of Time was brought home, and I at first refused to play it. So I watched my father play it for a while, and straight away it was something entirely new and different. Also at the time, it was the most real, to me at least. What brought me in was the ability to actually explore and get to know people, even if the people you talked to all repeated the same things over and over, no matter how many times you talked to them. It didn't matter. This game was something new and exciting to me, and to this day I get this good old nostalgic feeling whenever I play it. It is one of the greatest stories of all time for a video game, and was one of the first to create its own sort of universe, and it was one of the first 3D environment games where you can see in all 360 degrees, after Mario 64, that is. Plus, to this day, people are still discovering new secrets to the game, and so many in depth theories arise from this title alone, based upon this game that keeps it interesting. The characters feel like characters, and the visuals are some of the most cinematic of its time. The gameplay is also very fun, which of course is one of the most important things. And there are very involving puzzles that are simple enough in appearance, but very complex when you get down to it. There's so much that I could say about this game, but sometimes even looking back, I'm at a loss of words at how awesome this game is.
Interesting. 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 One of the greatest stories of all time for a video game. Care to chime in on that one, Rob?
I definitely think that is a phenomenal story. I mean, granted, the story gets repeated over every title that they've made. However, think about how it's done. Think about, does that ever get old? You're doing the same thing, but
Yeah, but in this one, you're kind of playing both at the same time. Like, I don't know. When you go through that time shift of 7 years and you could use the ocarina to go back and forth, you're kind of playing both at the same time. Does that make sense?
no.
No, I don't know. I like split timelines. I guess is the point. I kind of feel
Ah,
like you're playing young Link and adult Link at the same time, which kind of fascinates me. The concept of it fascinates me.
yes, that is absolutely something that this title strikes out completely different from the rest of them. But I mean, it created a phenomenal series of games that, even though it's the same thing over and over, and when we talked that it's Link saving Zelda and all of Hyrule from Ganon, and it's done over and over, but the ways that they come up with it, the storyline, the develop the story around that plot line is always done fantastically well, and it all started with this game, with
Yeah,
in 3D.
no, it did. But let's think about the 2D Zelda titles. What titles came out for us before Ocarina of Time?
All right. So the way that it started was
Legend of
with the
Zelda,
yep,
and then Legend of Zelda 2 Adventures of Link,
the Adventures of Link, and then A Link to the Past,
A Link to the Past Super Nintendo version. Yep.
Link's
Link's
Awakening.
Awakening. Link's Awakening. Okay. And is there one after that before Ocarina? That's what I can't
Ah,
remember.
There's the Faces of Evil Wand of Gamelin, which,
Mm-mm.
mm, yeah,
Is that Ocarina of Time's the next major title, right?
yes.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. We have Legend of Zelda, we have Adventures of Link, we have Link's Past, and we have Link's Awakening. And if I'm not mistaken, all those games are based around Link having to find the Triforce to save Hyrule. Am I wrong in that? I'm not wrong
Mm,
for Zelda, I'm not wrong for Adventures of Link, and I'm not wrong for Link's A Link to the Past. Link's Awakening is the one I can't remember off the top of my head. I haven't played the remake yet, but I don't think I'm wrong.
that's one I haven't played, so I could not tell you.
Okay. My
But
point is
actually reading it, it looks like neither Zelda nor the Triforce make an appearance in that one.
yes. Okay. So that's my point. I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, we talk about this story where this Zelda series, and realistically, the whole point is to save Zelda, which I mean he does in the first one, Legend of Zelda. Whatever. But I think that this is the first game that brought Zelda, that made Zelda a person and up the stakes by making it about her. I mean, don't get me wrong, we were collecting pieces of Triforce to save her in the first couple, but I really feel that when you come into this and you meet her, and then you have the scene that at the end of the act, right, where she is on the horse with Impa and they're running away and Ganon's chasing them, and that's when you get taken out, put into stasis. I think I really think that that is a moment in which Zelda becomes what everything is about. I don't know if for me at least, I don't think that we genuinely had that until this moment. From the story standpoint, that took the Legend of Zelda series into a whole new place. In this review, we talk about characters, right? He talked about characters and character building, and that's it. Like that's the moment for me. That's when this became the Legend of Zelda, and not A Link to the Past or Link's Awakening or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yes, that was a whole lot, and you gave me right. Just kidding. It just
I'm just saying that was a whole lot, and you pretty much hit it right on the head, man. Damn. What do you want me to sit here in dissent when I'm in agreement? The series is like great, and you know,
No, I like to tease you. I like to tease you. I know I talk too much. I talk way too much. I don't give room for anyone else to talk. Sorry, listeners. All right. Next, praise. Who's the next person on the list that heaps praise on the series, Rob?
Steven says this game is the highest rated game on Metacritic, and for good reasons. It takes elements from every other game that existed before it and multiplied it several times over. Almost 12 years later, I can play Ocarina of Time and still see things that it does that games of this 2010 decade cannot do. It stands the test of time and will forever be in my heart as the greatest game of all time ever in the world. Many games have tried to conquer that title. All have failed. I'm more than happy to say that. Also on Metacritic, user Zelgamesh writes, "This is the Sergeant Pepper's of gaming. It's perfect in length, the storyline is incredible, the characters are deep and likable, the dungeons have some sort of deepest puzzles a Nintendo 64 can offer. It's a masterpiece, beyond belief." And last, for our praises of the night, Joe B on Metacritics writes, "Certainly the best one player game of all time. It mixes fantasy, role playing, and action into a game that has a premise of a young boy with serious overtones. Themes include maturing quickly, accepting who one is, and the eternal questions of the effects of time travel. I mean, come on. The whole thing with the Shadow Temple is mind bending. Very few games can boast a premise this rich, smart, and well thought out. Anyone who has problems with this game simply doesn't know what the word superb means."
Sergeant Pepper's of gaming.
It's a bold statement, but when the shoe fits.
I think I said all I was going to say about the characters and everything. I do think that this was much better at what it did than many games before it. It was a very big defining moment in a lot of stuff. Despite the fact that we love it and all these people love it, you alluded to the fact that not everyone loves it, right?
That is absolutely correct, such as
Plenty
everything.
plenty of criticism here. I sent you some of these. Why don't you read to us some of the criticism, Rob?
Sure thing, Dave. So, first up, Ultimate Analyst writes, "Adventure is fun, but does not hold up well. Water Temple is beyond annoying. camera is beyond revolting, and it is often hard to understand what is okay to do and what is not. What I mean by that is sometimes it wants you to experiment, but then it punishes you when you get something wrong, which ironically discourages exploration. I wouldn't be so hard on it if this wasn't considered a masterpiece. I would say try it, really. If you haven't played it yet, then try it. I don't have any nostalgia for the game, so maybe that's why I'm so annoyed at all its flaws. And yes, I do think Breath of the Wild was way more fun and adventurous to play.
I really take offense to that. It wants you to experiment, but punishes you when you get something wrong. Isn't that kind of the concept of experimentation? Like when it comes to video games, you know, when you don't do it right, you get punished, and that teaches you to not do it again wrong. I, I, I don't understand what's so bad about it. Where in the world is there not a gameplay loop that punishes you for doing something wrong? Oh, I don't know. I can't wrap my head around what this dude is saying.
It doesn't make much sense to me, but, where there's a will, there's a way, and this guy willed to find a fault with the game.
And also, come on, we talk about it all the time. It's so stupid to look at things through modern lenses. It's not fair, to be totally honest with you, because it's just not fair. So, what else you got? Who else criticized this game?
Well, next up, from Metacritic, we have user Javelino, who writes, I love Legend of Zelda, but this game almost killed it for me. First of all, Navi is so annoying. This fairy always says stupid things and states the obvious 100% of the time. Second, the intro to this game was horrendous, and the entire first act was annoying.
What?
Yeah, I,
What?
I have no idea on that one.
What intro was horrendous? What intro? The Navi part, maybe? And the first act? Is he talking about the Jabba Jabba run through the intestinal dungeon? Maybe?
That, the Deku Tree,
I
you know,
don't know. I thought it was a great introduction.
well,
You know
again,
what, Java Leno? Fuck you. What else does he have to say?
so he goes on to say that third, the overworld and transportation was annoying. Hating on Epona? Come on, man. We shouldn't be dissecting this guy's
Basically.
review, but come on, Epona of all things.
And then
Horses.
what? Move on.
Anywho, fourth, the locking system was terrible.
What?
Uh,
What? Like, what else would you do? Technologically, what else would you do? I don't know.
well, again, we're looking at it from rose colored lenses, and this person likely wasn't.
Yeah.
So, to them, they're used to, I can free aim. Well, you didn't have that ability back then, so.
Yeah.
So they go on to say that the second act was good, but the first act was so terrible that it ruined the entire experience for me. I don't understand how anyone thinks this game is a masterpiece. The only thing that is good about this game is the story. The overall experience is frustrating at times, and some of the bosses are bad as well. I will definitely not recommend this game to anyone. All right, buddy. Well, we won't recommend your attitude either.
Oh man. Well, and then we just, like I said, we have people that refuse to give this game its due because they want to compare it to modern games, like Vectus99 here, who writes outdated and bland. While this may have at one time presented new and interesting ideas, they are not at all engaging or fantastic from a modern perspective. I mean, I hate that. Oh yeah, they suck from a modern perspective. You suck from a modern perspective. I mean, seriously, fuck off. Man, Vectus goes on to write, coupling this with a poorly executed mechanic, frustrating tedium, and an uninteresting world, Ocarina of Time is best passed up for future games in the series or even for other games entirely. That dude, ouch.
You know, for people who always want to look at these from modern lenses, I really want to ask them a question. If your childhood self saw you now, would they be proud? Or are you the kind of person who that they did not ever want to become? If you're the
uh,
latter, maybe you should give these games another try.
got one more criticism for you to read, Rob. What about Galactica 1310 here on Metacritic? How does he feel about the game?
Galactica writes, lots of Zelda fans claim Ocarina of Time is the best Zelda, if not the best game of all time. I strongly disagree. I played up until the Fire Temple and I just couldn't finish it. The game itself was boring, and the world was empty. The only places that were there were places you needed to be for the main storyline. The game lacked in charm and felt dull and bland. My favorites in the series, Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, were much better. Ocarina of Time feels linear, the puzzles are easy, the temples are uncreative, and the game just doesn't pull me in and get me hooked on it like Twilight Princess and Wind Waker. So to be honest, Ocarina of Time is really, really overrated.
Rob, we started this segment with me asking you how you felt about Ocarina of Time, and you have a generally favorable outlook on it, correct?
That is correct.
Do you feel it's overrated?
I feel that for again, we talked about it before. For those that didn't grow up with the game, it's definitely hard to compare it to modern games. But when you look at the game for what it was in its time, I don't think so. I don't think that it's overrated because if you are one of the people who played it from its time, or you truly can look at it, ignoring the modern day graphics, ignoring the modern day mechanics, and really understanding what this game was and how pivotal it was in that evolution of gaming, you realize that it's much more than just the game. And it
Did you did you play it originally on an N64? I mean, I know it's a little bit. You would have been 3 when this came out, so it's a little bit before your time. But did you get to play it on N64?
My original playthrough was with a friend on Nintendo 64, yes.
You know, I never owned an N64. It's one of the I was a PlayStation person at the time, and I have never owned an N64.
I was not until about oh, no, I can't say that. I was about 16 when we got our first Nintendo 64. Dad and I found one at a pawn shop. Or, no, it wasn't a pawn shop. It was a comic book store.
Gotcha. I played this for the first time when it was re-released on GameCube in the Legend of Zelda collector's edition thing that had the it had this with the master quest to this and a couple other legend. I think it was Legend of Zelda 1, 2, and maybe Majora, whatever the mask
Majora's
ones.
Mask.
Majora's Mask. Thank you.
Yeah, it was The Legend of Zelda,
Yep.
Adventures of Link, Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask.
That's right. Yep, yep. That's the first time I got to play it. So for me, I didn't play it young either. It was a little bit more in my life, but it still made a good impact on me. I think that this is a good game. I think that it's a great story. I think it's a creative story. I think that this is the basis for all the subsequent Zelda stories. We talked about the plot to Zelda, and honestly, when we talk about Legend of Zelda and Legend of Zelda 2 and that, we were just talking about, they centered around Link, but I think after that, it more centered around Zelda and the concept of saving Hyrule more so than the Triforce and Link. I think the Triforce and Link were the focal points of the first bunch, and I do. I think this is a great game. I think even though I played it during the GameCube era, when arguably, if you want to talk about bland graphics and all that, they wouldn't have been a point. I still really enjoyed this game. It is an excellent game. I'm still really fascinated by the split in the timeline. I don't know why, but I think that's super cool.
Yeah, it definitely is, and it's it definitely got brought up. I had a roommate in college, Kiefer, who huge fan of Zelda. He's actually the reason that I still have the Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time for 3DS. It's actually his copy.
Nice.
So he's been so kind as to lend it to me for the last 2.5 years while I forget to play it until now. But he'd actually tried sitting down with me and explaining the timelines to me, and let me tell you, it still goes over my head. I know for people who have played the games, it's probably much simpler, but considering I've only played a few of the select titles in there, namely Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, and Breath of the Wild most recently, not including the original Legend of Zelda, you know, I never really got to play those timeline splits except for Majora's Mask, and to me, that was just a continuation. It didn't really occur to me that it was a split in a timeline. I
Yeah,
just thought it was a continuation of Link's childhood.
there's a lot of people who hate on. I really thought that Majora's Mask was really creative because it's essentially a story stuck in a time loop where you're stuck in that time loop until you break out of it, and I really like that concept. Rob, I guess with that being said, what is your favorite Zelda game?
It's definitely a toss up between this and Breath of the Wild. I feel that I definitely have more time with Breath of the Wild because it's such more of an expansive universe. There's so much more to do. Obviously, it's more modern. I can take it with me on the go a lot simpler than I can with Ocarina of Time. But there's just something about Ocarina of Time that no matter what I go back to, it's still enjoyable to this day. And quite frankly, I remember the game a lot more. I think back, and I actually had to stop and think about any of my fights with the blights within Breath of the Wild. But you think back and you remember, I mean, not so much yourself, but I had remembered the battle with the Phantom Cannon or battling Amoeba, or sorry,
Yeah, no, I know.
Amorpha,
More, yeah.
and battling it, going into Jabu Jabu, just remembering the entirety of the game. And maybe it's because it's shorter and there's a lot less to remember and it's more poignant on the story. But 10, 15 years later, that story is stuck with me. And who's to say that Breath of the Wild won't have that same lasting effect? Maybe I'm biased because of the length of time that I have the memory with,
Yeah, true
but
enough.
I definitely think it's a toss up between the two. What about yourself?
I think I'm really torn too between Breath of the Wild and one of the older ones. I really really enjoyed Breath of the Wild. I think it was a absolutely brilliant, I guess, reboot because it takes the same story but puts it into a totally different lens. I guess is the way. But for me personally, the we've talked about it before, and we'll come back to it. The Super Nintendo era was just my era. That was my influential gaming era where I have the most, when I was a kid, and I have the most fond memories of playing video games. So A Link to the Past for me is kind of the one I look back fondly nostalgia wise, and I want to go back to time and time again. So, although I will tell you that I hope sometime to be able to pick up the remake of Link's Awakening because I think that was a good game, and I'm looking forward to seeing that redone in a modern lens. Awesome. Well, Rob, before we head away from Ocarina of Time, is there anything that I missed or didn't bring up, or so on and so forth, that you'd like to add to the conversation?
I think we've ran this one to ground pretty well. I obviously there's probably some small things we're forgetting here and there, but this is one of those games that if you haven't played it, try it. It's You may be disappointed. I can't guarantee you're going to love the game, but I can say that it's something that you should try. Give it a whirl, see how you feel. Play the original, play it on the 3DS, play it on the GameCube, play it on an emulator, however you want to play it. Just give it a try. See what you feel, and try and look at it as a game that was pivotal in the evolution of gaming. Try and look at it without looking at it through modern lenses, and try to have fun. If you
It's
get down to the
fun.
bottom of it, it's a fun game. And,
I agree.
it's not for everyone, but there's a lot of different things in the game that I'm sure you'll find something that you really enjoy about it. So give it a try and let us know what you think. We'd love to hear it.
All right, Rob, gaming question of the week. You ready for it?
Hit me.
Have you ever wanted to live in a world from a video game? If so, which one and why?
Hmm. That's a mighty big question.
I know. Isn't that a good one? Any knee jerk reactions to it?
I mean, you think about it, Call of Duty having multiple lives is kind of a cool concept,
Yeah, I
but
don't know. I guess I don't think about it like that. When I think of world, like I think of what worlds I want to live in. And then I think about what worlds are the best ones that have drawn me in and whether or not I want to live in them. So for instance, like I think about would I want to live in say Red Dead Redemption, which I don't know because some of that's brutal. Would I want to live in Horizon Zero Dawn, which is post apocalyptic? I don't know, pretty brutal. Last of Us has an expansive world. I don't know if I want to live in zombie world. Do you know what I mean? Um, The Witcher 3 has an amazing world, but it's full of monsters. That's a big no for me, boss. I don't know, man. I try to think about like it's a huge question, and I don't know. No Man's Sky maybe that'd be pretty cool. Getting to live in all those really weird, wacky planets as long as the Sentinels weren't after you. I don't know.
no, that would be pretty interesting. You know, uh, Similarly, you could.
Skyrim.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to suggest Skyrim is definitely one, but again, your argument earlier was the monsters, and Skyrim is full of dragons.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, how about Elder Scrolls universe in general? I'm sure you could find a nice, cozy place to call home that maybe doesn't have dragons. I don't know.
That you could. Similarly, you could also join the Marine Corps in space and stop the orbiters and join the Halos.
That's a
Join Master
good.
Chief and
Yeah.
defend the Halo.
I I don't know if I have an answer to this. I don't know if there's a world that I would want to live in per se. I guess when we think about worlds that we want to live in, I think more like idyllic worlds, places that you can relax and settle down. And the whole point behind video games is conflict. If there wasn't any conflict, for the most part, we wouldn't have games. There'd be no driving point in the plot. And so I don't really know if I care to retire to any place that's constantly in conflict with itself, which I don't know, man. That's kind of why I think about like Red Dead Redemption, because Red Dead Redemption is just the Wild Wild West, and you could find some big piece of land and a ranch in the middle of nowhere and just go until cowboys and Indians take you down. I guess I can't find any. Fuck this place. Everything's evil.
Yeah, yeah, that it is. I don't know. There's nothing that really stands out to me. I think that I've definitely gotten lost in some of these worlds, but is it something I'd want to necessarily live my life in? I don't know because I've never been in that world truly, and I don't know what you really would be feeling. The constant fear, the the denial, the excitement. It- I don't know. That's a phenomenal question, and definitely something that I would love to hear. Anyone Has anyone ever given this a thought? Thought, this world sounds like a ton of fun to live in. I would love to escape the reality that I'm in and just plug myself into this game and be a member.
Yeah. Well, there we go. The answer is no. Apparently, neither one of us have found another world that we want to live in. Although, talk to me in about 2 weeks when Cyberpunk comes out, because I may change my mind. Rob, let's say somebody is interested in telling us what world they want to live in. Where so could they do that?
Well, Dave, the best way to do that would be to visit our website at memorycardlane.com. From there, you can get a little more information about the episodes, maybe see some of these reviews we're talking about. Maybe Dave will post the gaming question, get you guys a little bit of input. And there, you can find a link to our Discord. You go to our Discord, you join that, ask the questions, answer some questions, ask us questions. Who knows? Maybe we'll feature your question as the next gaming question of the week. What else can they find on memorycardlane.com, Dave?
You can join our Patreon. You can find past episodes. You can find goofy pictures of us. Not really. They're nice pictures, but we look goofy. You can also find links to our social media. I am on Twitter as David underscore is underscore wrong. And Rob, what are you doing on social media these days?
I can be found playing games on Twitch under the name Fat Boy Rips. FATBOIRIPZ.
Awesome. Well, before we take it out for the week, anything that you'd like to say to our listening audience?
As you've all come to expect by now, I just got to say thank you for listening. We appreciate it. We love what we do. We hope you love it too. And if not, come tell us about it. We'd love to hear your guys' dissenting opinions. That's what's a world without conflict, right? Without it, we wouldn't have video games, like Dave said.
Very true. Truer words have never been spoken. Smokin'? Whew. Fat boy rips.
Woo!
Uh, truer words have never been spoken. I'm done. I'm out. Okay, that's the place to call it. So next week we're going to be heading back to December of 1980. The final month to the beginning of the 80s brought us the beginnings of one of the best-selling game series of all time. In fact, this video game character is universally recognized as being the most recognizable mascot in the entire most recognizable video game mascot in the entire world. Get ready for talk about food as we discuss pizza, cherries, and the eating of flashing ghosts as we delve into Namco's Pac-Man franchise. We'll talk about how eating is a central element to the game design and how it became the theme crucial to the success of Pac Man, as well as other things, as we take next week's trip down memory card lane.
That was
Wow.
awful. That was
Yeah,
an awful
do it
rendition.
do it again.
Well, there was a purpose behind it, Dave. You know what the sound was?
What was that? Pac-Man?
No, that's the opening of the chests in Zelda.
Mm, I
Wah,
like
wah,
it.
wah, 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 wah.
We out.